Look at that, fancy intros and everything. Good evening. It's the Pro Synth Network live show. Oh, I think that kind of went well, though it did kind of flick between the two videos. And there was just like this, like we were all like, we're getting there. It's practice. We've got to practice that one. Anyway, welcome everyone. It's the Pro Synth Network live show episode. What's this? 33 now. We're still in the little league in terms of episode numbers, but hey, we're getting there. We're getting close. Joining me, as always, Ben Simpson and Cryss over there in California. And this week we are delighted to have Mr. Dominic Hawken. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah,
thank you. Here. Thank you for coming. Dominic, if you're familiar with Sonic State, you've probably seen him a lot on there. He's a musician, an app designer, and all sorts of other things, which we'll talk to him about a little bit later on. We'll talk about the app, which I've got on my phone. I have no trouble going to sleep whatsoever, so I'm probably not your target audience. But it is a really interesting thing. So we'll talk about that as well as your kind of career in music a little bit later. Ben, how are you, sir?
Very well, thanks. Very well.
Yeah. Anything interesting this week?
Well, I did a bit on that intro. Did a bit of music for the new intro sequence. That's the first bit of original music I've done in a while. Quite enjoyed it. Hope everybody else did. And more working on the songs for the new band. That's it.
Excellent. Could you just drop your gain down a little bit on your mic? It's a little bit distorty.
Yes.
If you could. Thank you very much. We'll go over to Cryss over in California. Good afternoon. How are you? Just 3 minutes past midday.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good. Anything interesting happening in your world this week?
I think the Pro Synth Network has been the most interesting stuff of my week.
Yeah, it's been a busy week.
Everything switched over, so everything's been going well.
Indeed. And you've got a little bit of information for us regards, because a lot of people, which will come to the chat room shortly, but a lot of people talking in the chat rooms over the last few weeks about how they could maybe contribute to us. And you've done something about that.
Yeah, so all three of us have been working hard this week, and obviously, we've got set up with StreamYard, and so clearly, I mean, at least in my picture now, you're seeing me in horrific high definition. That's how the guys was like over here in the States when they went from the over-the-air radio or television broadcasts, from the old analog or whatever to digital. All of a sudden, all the newscasters, you saw their plastic surgery and the craziness, and it was horrifying. So hopefully it's not as bad as that. But so as we've been trying to really get the streaming side of things, really honed in, we've done some research. We've switched over to StreamYard, and we've chosen to do one of their lower packages, but it affords us a lot of great features, and you can see, a lot of you were in the test earlier this week as we were trying out different systems. So as part of that, Robbie, Ben, and I chipped in to get this started, and we all let me turn up my volume here. Hopefully that'll help. So we've also set up a PayPal donation, and you can find that in the description box. So if you'd like to help support just the streaming side of things, again, the three of us don't get paid. We've resorted to a life of crime to support ourselves. So
crimes against music.
Yeah, but if you'd like to help keep the nice stream going, you can pitch in. There's some options. Robbie, do you have that? The web page of that up? I
haven't got the web page, but I've got the link here in the banner.
Okay. Well, anyways, you guys can follow the link, and there's some preset things, or at the end of it, you can give like a pound, 2 pounds, and 5. I don't remember what it was. Or you can enter your own amount and give us, whatever you want. But again, it just goes for the streaming service, and we're not going to bug you a whole lot about it. But in the description box directly below the video screen, if you open that, show more, you'll see the link in there. Also in there Importantly, our guest links. So for Dominic, his work is in there if you want to check out his stuff. And then below all that stuff, all three of our channels are in there, as well as anything else. I think also we have the link to ProSynth Network on Facebook. So if you haven't gotten connected to us there, that's just where all this really started. So we would love to have you join us. We talk all the way through the week, have some really cool people in there. And I think that's about it. Anything you guys would like to add to that?
No, I think you've pretty much covered everything there. Ben? Yeah?
No,
good. Excellent. Also, if you look further down there in the video description underneath all that, you will also find our regular PlayStation Bingo card given to us by Native VS in the chat room. You can thank him for that. So if you want to play along during the show, there's a bunch of things, and you can have a laugh and see if we can tick some of those babies off. I don't think we've mentioned anything on there just yet. Maybe no. Oh, actually, no. We have mentioned one thing. I won't say what it is, but yeah, have a little bit of fun with that one. So we will crack on with the first. Get a few topics out of the way. There are some fairly big ones in terms of music hardware this week. Let's first of all get the slightly less interesting one out of the way, which is this one from Korg. It's the Nautilus workstation. It's essentially kind of like it's to the Kronos what Modi-X was to the Montage. I think that's what most people are kind of looking at this. It's got the Kronos engine. It's got all of those engines. The virtual analog stuff. It's got the FM stuff. It's got all of the sampling. And it's got the big pianos and everything. Interestingly, it comes in three sizes: 61, 76, 88. None of those feature aftertouch. That's a topic we'll come back to in a little while. But it seems to kind of tick a lot of boxes in terms of having all of those sounds in a nice, convenient place. Probably more ideally suited to the live musician. Has anybody got any really burning feelings about this one before we go and do the rounds?
I just think that it's the aftertouch thing again for me. It's the 88 key one, yeah, all right. Pianos don't have aftertouch, so I can understand it not being there. But like, if they do a 76 key keyboard, then that is a prime candidate for aftertouch for me.
It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah,
the way
really
these
weird.
companies are dropping aftertouch. Dominic, are you an aftertouch fan? Does that put you off? Oh, you've gone muted.
I'm
There we go.
not used to the system. There you go. Sorry about that. Chat away to myself. I was when I was more of a live keyboard player. I used aftertouch all the time, and I'm very jealous of the sound that comes out of things like the CS80 and that stuff, where it's got polyphonic aftertouch, and it's just, you can bring a lot of expression in. So when you see people like Eric Persing for Omnisphere fame playing his CS80, there's a couple of videos about it. It is really, really nice. That said, if you think practically, I mostly edit out aftertouch in my DAW because it gets in the way and it's quite annoying, and then I might draw a curve in if I want some mod wheel and stuff. But this is primarily a live instrument, isn't it? Or a one box kind of, I'm going to use this as my music station. I don't really want to build up a massive studio. So from a pro point of view, probably a live bit of kit, and from an amateur point of view, a one-stop box. And it would be nice to have it. I don't know if it responds to it from extended, but that kind of defeats the point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That said, it's a surprising omission, but it wouldn't stop me buying one if that was what I was in the market for. You know? I don't think it's particularly aimed at any of us. But those kind of workstation workhorse machines are really nice, and the sounds I've heard are great at what they do. It does what it says on the tin, and it's a kind of master of all trades. What's not to like? But I agree, that is an omission. Would I really notice it? It might make me look at the alternative options, to be honest, if I was comparing the obvious competitors. that might be enough to put me off. In practice, unless you're doing a lot of live stuff, and it's those big squelchy synth sounds that you can open up the filter a bit. You can assign the aftertouch to more than just a vibrato or something that it really comes into its own.
I mean, I'm not a player by any stretch of the imagination, but even I appreciate aftertouch just for that. Like you say, it's expression. I've spoken about it many times. The Korg Prophecy for me, that was one of the killer things with those sounds. Aftertouch just gave it that more realistic feel. It's just it's odd. Cryss, have you got any thoughts on Nautilus as a unit? I don't think it's clean. It's probably not up your street. This is it?
Yeah, totally not up my street. But I'm heading to the garage for the pitchfork and the torches, so that we can head over to Japan and knock on Yamaha and Korg and Roland's door for this issue. Yeah, and just to agree with everything that's already been said, even having it be assignable to something as simple as vibrato, to me, is a very important expressive thing. And when I think about, I'm not the greatest keyboardist, but when I play, I miss that interaction like you have with the guitar, where you're holding notes and you're giving it personality and vibrato, and something that even if you're not using the aftertouch for filter or to affect other modulations, having it for vibrato gives you the opportunity to use the mod wheel for other things and have it be, because you can set it and just leave it there in that spot, whereas the aftertouch is just a momentary thing as you play it. So to me, that's a pretty important thing. So I'm working on a sound set for the Novation Summit right now, and it has aftertouch, but the aftertouch, the actual physical keyboard, getting it to trigger aftertouch is so difficult. I mean, it's kind of like a 2-finger affair to really get it to, where you're not feeling like you're hurting your fingers to do it. At least it has it, but that's something that's also really important, that you're able to adjust some of the curves and things, like if manufacturers would put that in there. Like they added some of that to the Moog 1, where you can change the response of it, or like with my X key, same thing. You could actually draw in a curve with the software as how hard and soft you want it to trigger, and that's a really nice feature.
Yeah.
So 2021, will Korg and Roland and Yamaha keep doing this?
Yeah, because we have to say, in Korg's defense, or so we're not railing on them, Yamaha missed it off the Modi X across all three models of the Modi X, and we're going to come to this next thing in a moment, because they've also left aftertouch off this next item. But FM synthesis, there you go, there's one for your bingo cards. It really, it makes sense, aftertouch, because of it just, so it escapes me why. Is it cheaper? I mean, is it that much cheaper? Are bottom lines now requiring that decision? Because Modal have put it on Argon and Cobalt. That's a really nice key bed, and the aftertouch is there, and you have to mean to do it to get it. It's not one of these things. I think it might have been Robin Vincent in the on the Facebook page this week said, "Oh yeah, aftertouch, that thing I have to edit out after I've played it." And kind of to what Dominic was saying. If it's done well, and I guess there are aftertouch settings, you can turn it on, turn it off. It's just nice for it to be there, and if you don't want it, turn it off, or go through and filter it out through in your DAW. But I just think it's a bit of a miss.
I wouldn't not use it. It's just that thing that always ends up as an accident, and I'm a bit OCD when it comes to MIDI messages in the DAW. Definitely, I mean, in terms of cost. Polyphonic, definitely every single note has to have a sensor. And generally on normal aftertouch, they just have a bar that runs along the top, which as you squeeze the bar with the key, it will give a kind of resistance reading. So, but it's still, I would say, I mean, most of the manufacturers buy their keybeds in, don't they, I think? Or there's probably a central place that...
I think Korg actually make their own.
Ah, okay.
So I'm told.
I mean, there's definitely a cost and a test to that whole thing. So I don't know what their margins are so tight, aren't they? But it's worthy enough to have been brought up in places like here and online and stuff. It's an obvious omission, not admission.
I
I wonder about that with the margins, though, because we have Modal putting out some much nicer hardware. It has channel aftertouch, and it has a great Fatar key bed. But the one that I really wanted to bring up was the Hydra synth, because they've not just brought in some other thing. I think they've developed it, and it's coming out on a keyboard that's pretty dang inexpensive. I mean, a fraction of the cost of this Nautilus. And so they've been able to do it as a startup company, to be able to find a way to do it. Seems to me it's not like going to cost a big company like Roland or Korg, who've even done it in the past, much money to do it. And which of us wouldn't pay $50 more for aftertouch on something that's already whatever $2 or $3 grand?
I mean, I was thinking about it. Yeah, I was thinking about it in the sense, in the automotive industry. I remember when my dad in 1978 bought a Fiat 132 Super Mirafiori, and it was kind of like it was up against the Ford Cortina at the time as the kind of ultimate businessman's car, and he bought it because it came with electric front windows, and that was a kind of a new thing. Electric windows came in the 70s. It was mostly on your high-end cars. Then it came into your kind of everyman car at the front, and then a couple of years later it was standard at the back, and now it's just standard everywhere. And if you wanted a car with manual windows, you'd probably have to pay. So it's the same with things like aftertouch. It kind of came in during the 70s. Surely by now it just should be a standard part of keyboard manufacture, and the costs would have been negated, and everyone's just making aftertouch. And if Ben pointed this out earlier in the week, put it in there and just let's turn it off if we don't want it, but at least it's there for everyone.
I think they must be conducting some kind of like customer research, and they must be getting back from people. There's a few in our group that would probably go this way, but they must be saying that they don't want it. It's not a necessity to them.
Well, somebody made a very, very good point as well, that in the last 10, 15 years or so, we've seen this massive swing or expansion of modular synthesis, which traditionally doesn't rely on the keyboard as a mode of input. It's sequences, it's arpeggiators, it's other forms of triggering. And yes, some people use keyboards with them, but it's not completely. There are different ways of doing it. Whereas, speaking for myself, I'm old school. Every synthesizer had a keyboard back in the day, and you had module versions of them, but if you wanted a keyboard, there was a keyboard, and the keyboards were great. This thing behind me has got it's hammer action, it's got aftertouch, it's everything on there. That's 1984, and it's still one of the best kind of feeling keyboards that you can get. And so, but maybe it's that, maybe it's just the fact that we're making music differently, and the traditional Western chromatic keyboard is less important, and therefore you can do away with some of these things. I don't know.
Well, that's the less interesting one out of the way anyway.
Yeah, there we go. Let's move on. Let's move on to this one, which is the more interesting from my perspective because it's FM, is the Korg opsix. And we talked about this last week because it was there was a leak. I think it was on a Danish or a Swedish music store's website. It kind of went up for a couple of hours and then disappeared. But of course, the wonder of the internet is everything you publish on the internet is there forever, whether you take it off or not. And we speculated, and of course on Wednesday it was officially announced. So it is this 6-op FM synthesizer. It's called Altered FM because it's got it does a few things slightly differently to other things. It's drawn out some of the controls into onto the control surface. So you've now got your operator mixer where you've got rotaries for the ratios and faders for the levels, and it really kind of makes it more of an intuitive real-time experience. And we've now had a chance to watch some of the videos. There's some really good ones out there demonstrating it, and it does sound nice, and it's got lots of effects built in. So that's one big thing it's got over its predecessors. In terms of the old FM synthesizers back in the day had no effects on them, so sounding out of the box pretty limp. But this does really sound very nice. Dom, have you had a chance to sort of listen to what this does? Does this make FM more appealing to you than them before?
Yeah, I've only listened to it online. I was a bit down on this, and I had a couple of comments on it. So I've never seen you not positive about something. So I'm always kind of, yes, it's great. What a great keyboard. And I was thinking about it afterwards, and I think I'm a bit meh about FM. I think that's what the trouble is, and it's not this particular thing is great on paper. It's got all the kind of FM stuff, and it's got some analogy filtering on top, which is what's missing. So really, it's just got a different source of oscillators, and that's great. Except, what's the name of this thing? There was an FPGA based kit, or open source project. It's called XFM Polyphonic FM Synth. It's made by Future Sounds with a 3 and a Z. And they just put out an open source thing with this chip, and you can buy the bits for about £90.
Oh yeah, my friend bought one of those. Yeah.
And you can download. It's closed source code, I think, but you can download it. Basically, it is the FM. It's a couple of DX7s on an FPGA chip, and an FPGA chip is a chip that you can basically build your own chip into it. It's one of these new things. It means you don't have to go and manufacture at huge cost lots and lots of chips like the big manufacturers do. And it really is this. It's 32 voice polyphony, 6 operators, and it's kind of base level DX7. And I think what made me a little bit in the first place with the Korg one was because it hadn't taken the FM that much further. It had added stuff in terms of the filtering and the effects and all those things which are definitely missing, but the FM seemed a little bit limited. It's still in the days of the DX7 with the same number of operators, probably less algorithms actually in terms of it, but that said, it's got sliders on it. It's much more approachable than a DX7 ever was, which only had one slider, I think, anyway. So, you're automatically ahead of the game there. You can think in terms of analog. A lot of the times when you're playing around with FM, you get a sound and you really do just want to take the edge off it with a filter or adjust the envelope. And it can be quite confusing because envelopes are often controlling frequency as well as amplitude. And one knob, that big filter knob that's in the middle of every single analog synth is kind of what you need. So it's definitely much more sort of performant and useful. And I wasn't specifically down on it. I was just trying to imagine it's not probably something I would run off and buy to add to my arsenal of synths or anything, and I would have liked to have seen it another couple of oscillators in there, more algorithms, something a bit more special. Do you know what I mean?
Because there is.
So I was just going to say, it's still got a random button, whereas it should have an intelligent random button. It should have we know this is actually not going to sound completely idiotic because we're not randomizing everything. We're randomizing based on stuff you've done, that kind of thing. But actually, if you can buy and build your own kit for £100, if you get with no keyboard, you end up with a circuit board. This with the analog filtering, with the knobs and the dials and the keyboard and the effects, it's good value basically.
Ben, what do you think about this? I mean, are you a fan of that 37 key
no
thing?
Not at all.
Really? You surprised me.
I just think that they really should have done a 5-octave version. I don't get that, but I was interested in some of the things that Dominic said there. Has it got less algorithms than the DX7? Because
it's actually got more.
Oh, has it? Right.
Yeah, it's so the DX7 has 32.
Yeah.
This has got 40, I think, standard, and then you've got some space for user algorithms that you can put together yourself. But I didn't quite understand what it was saying in the description on the website. It sounded like you could create an algorithm and then you couldn't store that for use later on. You could just create a patch and do it, and then you'd have to create another one. But I
obviously just made it up to back up my argument. I must have misread it, but I mean the algorithms of anyone who doesn't have an FM synth are literally preset arrangements of oscillators, basically. So you can have them all in a row or sideways, and so you're kind of limited. But if you can arrange your own, that takes away that argument.
I mean it's nowhere near like the EssenceFM, the Kodamo EssenceFM, which we'll talk about, or something that they've done a little bit later, where you've got freely assignable algorithms and you can have any combination. And I was trying to think about the math. How do you figure out how many possible combinations of algorithms you could have with 6 operators?
Yeah.
But to your point as well, also the fact that this is it's just a 6-op FM, which is good. You can get a good range of tones with it, but we've moved on. We've got 8-op with FMX, FS1R, and others. I think somebody said that Yamaha still have a patent on 8 operator. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or not. Oh. So whether I know the 6-op. I know that some patent expired, and that's why everybody now can do FM and has been for some while, probably since Native Instruments did it. But I'm not sure whether that's the reason or whether it just complicated things, because this does. I mean, I was speaking with Manny Fernandez about this, and it's going to bring a lot of people to FM that were avoiding it because of the complexity or the perceived complexity of it. And once you understand how it works, then and you've kind of built muscle memory on one of these old ones, it's not too difficult to get to the sound that you want. But it's that getting through that barrier, and maybe this will get through that.
I used to be able to program FM, but I can't remember now how I did it. If you put me in front of a DX7 now, I would not have a clue. But I remember I had was it the DX21? Back in the 90s or something, I had a DX21, and I used to be able to get the sounds that I wanted off that. So I think if Korg's bringing this out now with an easier to understand interface, it could be quite influential and successful, I think, and it has got a nice tone to it. I do think they've missed an opportunity about taking it to the next level. Like Dominic said, we're years and years on from the first FM releases now.
Yeah.
I think that it come back in some new, like Yamaha did really with the Mk.II X, but it does sound great. So.
But it seems everyone's got it's FM has always been this kind of, it's got loads of potential, but there's always something that's dragging it back. I remember when they brought the FS1R out, it's like, my God, this is 8 operators, 88 algorithms, it's got formant shaping, it sounds incredible, but it's like painting the Sistine Chapel through a letterbox when you want to edit the stuff. And to be fair to Yamaha, they wanted to really push the app. But this was in the days before apps were apps. It was an editor, and it didn't really do everything, and it just kind of fell on its arse. They come out with Mk.II X and a montage, so that's FMX, and it brings back the 8 operators. But why not bring back formant shaping? And why leave aftertouch off the keyboard? And why this? And why make it so expensive? And why make it quite cheaply built? Nobody seems to get it right, tick all of those boxes, which is a shame. I'd like to see Modal have a go at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they've got this platform now that clearly can do a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them have a crack. Cryss, we haven't come to you. What are your thoughts now you've had a chance to take in the opsix?
Yeah, first of all, I saw your comments, work on getting Ben volume up a little bit. I think it sounds nice, and I've liked some of the demo videos. I'm hoping that this is just a stepping stone for something better, for all the reasons that you guys have already listed, bigger key bed, aftertouch. I'd like to see some individual knobs or some other way to be able to configure the envelopes in it. I've seen some people that were a little bit upset about this, that they had traditional ADSR envelopes instead of the multi-segment ones. Like, that would probably make it quite a bit more versatile. So if they could do something that would be expanded, more knobs, more sliders, that I think would be just a fantastic hit. This seems fun. I'm sure they're going to sell a lot of them, and hopefully it brings in enough capital that they'll want to, really kind of evolve this into something that's even better.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having a tweak with the microphone settings. Yeah, I didn't realise that I could, or I'd forgotten that I could bring individual settings up here without you guys. So yes, you should all be, hopefully, we'll let our chat commenters tell us if we're at the right levels.
Robbie, we'll also have a comment requesting more cowbell.
Oh yeah, well I have to. Yeah,
right.
We'll have to get some cowbells. I don't think.
Shake
Is there? Yeah, I don't know. There's a cowbell on the Cobalt there, but yeah. So opsix. There we go. It's kind of hit. It's kind of miss. I was literally that close to ordering the Essence FM the other day. I thought, stuff this. I'm going to stick it on 24 months finance or something. I'll get this, and it's going to blow me away. And then they announced that they are making a Mk.II version, which is going to have removable rack ears, because at the moment they're like a fixed unit. So removable rack ears. They've altered the manufacturing process to make it easier, but they're not going to mess around with the internals or the design or anything. And I was just like, I know what happens. I'll buy the Mark I and the Mk.II will come out, and there'll be something slightly different, and then I'll get buyer's remorse. Then they also say that they're going to do this keyboard thing called the is it the VFM37? And it wasn't a 61, it was like a 50 something. So I don't know whether that's a different type keyboard or what. But yeah, so they've I was going to do that, and then this comes out, and I think I think it's 699 RRP. So I'm guessing 599 is probably what you'll get it at in the shops. It's not an awful amount of money, but is it worth considering my obsession?
An epic bass synth. I mean,
oh yeah,
really, because FM's always aliasing. You always get that noise on the top. So it's got an analogy filter. I say E, as in I guess it's not analog circuitry, but just the ability to turn it down. Because whenever I used to use, I mean, the classic FM sounds are the bass that you get, because it's just very hard and pumping, but also quite clean. And then the belly, I mean, when it originally came out, FM really didn't have to do anything other than sound like a good piano sound, because at that time people were lugging their Yamaha and Rhodes pianos around, and they could literally just go out with a DX and those kind of things. And it's very hard to put lots of FM into a mix, because it all sticks out. It will always cut across. Which makes such good bass. But I reckon, I don't know if there's like a unison mode or something, not that it's even necessary, but if you get some decent bass patches in there with that filter, that almost justifies it as a machine.
Yeah, I don't think it has.
I never even heard of a unison FM synth, but that's the kind of thing you'd want to try, wasn't it?
DX7 Mk.II had unison poly mode on there, which really does make a difference. So that's a bit of a miss.
Is that just a 2-voice unison?
Yes.
Does it do more than that? Because I'm guessing, because the Mk.II, if I recall you saying that it was like 2 DX7s.
It's by timbrel, so yeah, the DX1 and the DX5 were essentially 2 DX7 engines, so you could have double the polyphony of a DX7. You had 32 instead of 16. Yeah. But the Mk.II DX7 still had 16 polyphony. But when you used it in that layer split mode, or the unison poly mode, it split it into 2, so it was 8 notes polyphony if you used a layer patch on there. So it's just more clever use of the system, rather than just doubling everything up in the good old fashioned way.
30 years later, it's still unfortunately setting the standard, isn't it?
I know, yeah, crazy. So this, we talked about Kodamo. That's the let me see, is that the right? So Kodamo EssenceFM currently, I believe, is they've sold out at the factory, or the place they build it in France. But there are a few knocking around, and this is I'm just kind of hovering. It's just a little bit kind of. If it was like 999, I'd probably subconsciously think, yeah, that's fine. It's under 1,000, and go for it. But the other news from Kodamo, whilst we are talking about them, and let me just find the right page to share. Where has it gone? That's right. It was on Facebook, wasn't it? So this is probably going to be the wrong one, knowing my luck. Getting used to them. No, here it is. Look at that. First time. So it's the VFM37, which is this concept they've announced. So it has a very, very similar look to that top panel. Instead of the screen being in the middle, it's just pushed to the right. The buttons all look much the same. They're talking about this VFM37. Oh, they've changed it. It is now VFM61. So it's clearly 2 keyboards, but they won't say what the engine is, whether it's going to be an FM engine the same as the Essence, or maybe a cut down version of it, or what. And if I was given the choice between an Essence FM in keyboard form or module form, I'd go for the keyboard form every time. But some other bits and bobs that they're doing, this Mk.II version of that. So it's nice to see this little manufacturer actually booming. They've sold out of the first batch. They've got other products in the works. So it's really, really good to see. Any thoughts on Kodamo's new stuff, anyone, before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the form factor of it, it's got the small size like the opsix, but with that big touchscreen and the buttons knobs that it has. If it works like the EssenceFM, it's going to be much more immediate and easy to program than the opsix. Yeah. Of course, you're going to pay twice as much for it, but I know in that situation, I think it would be probably worth it for the ease involved.
I think when I've seen videos of the EssenceFM in use with that touchscreen and the simplicity and combination of the color-coded rotaries and the touchscreen, it's far more intuitive, and it really does seem suited to FM use.
I was going to say, if any kind of interface is going to work with FM, it's probably going to be a touchscreen, isn't it? So you can really move those algorithms about and set it up how you want it.
Yeah.
In a kind of appropriate way,
Yeah.
Because everything else doesn't seem to fit. If you were going to make a knob per function FM synth, it'd have to look like the JD800, wouldn't it? Or the Waldorf Wave.
We've all seen the Jellinghouse DX7 programmer from back in the day, and then D-Tronics did one recently called the DT7, and it is it's like you've got this row of controls for each operator, and then there's 6 of those, and so it's gargantuan. So good luck to any UI designer who's going to try and come up with a perfect FM synth. Who knows? One day.
But the touch screen seems perfect, though. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I think that's it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robbie.
No. Go.
Do I recall that there was going to be 2 different VFM models coming out? Because there was that one, which was a small, and I almost think that I remember seeing another, like this one was like the VFM37 or something, and then I thought there was one with a larger number, like maybe indicating a bigger
61.
spread.
Yeah, 61.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
one.
Yes, definitely.
If it can do all the stuff that the EssenceFM does, I think that's the only thing that if I recall correctly from one of their early releases about this, is that it may have been like a stripped down version or something, which would be kind of a bummer.
Absolutely, would be a bit of a miss, but we'll see. It's just good to see all these new companies coming out and doing things that the big boys maybe are afraid to do. The bean counters won't let them do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's FPGAs. That's back to FPGAs again, isn't it? You can,
Indeed.
You don't have to go to the big manufacturers anymore.
That's it. Absolutely.
This is good, though. I like this one.
Yeah. So the weekly Behringer slot. We need a song for that, don't we? So Behringer have teased this one. They do this quite often now, where they say, we're thinking of making this, tell us what you think. And I actually think that's quite good, because they're responding to consumer demand. And if lots of people say, oh no, we don't want an RD9 in Eurorack form, we want this, then they won't go ahead and make this. Or vice versa. If they get lots of positive stuff, then sure, they'll hopefully it'll come to light. So the RD9 apparently is getting very close to release, because they fixed all the firmware issues that they said they were experiencing. But they threw this up as a suggestion on their Facebook page the other day, and let's use some of this wonderful new technology that we've got here. So originally this was going to look like no, not like that, like this. So that was their first design, and then literally 2 days later, after a bunch of feedback, they changed the design ever so slightly to this, and there are noticeable differences. So say what you like about these guys, and often people do. However, they do listen, and they do put stuff out there for us to say, that's what we want. Dom, you are clearly a Eurorack user. Would you like one of these?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm a recent kind of Euro rack mod, and I have one sitting here which I actually use. I fell down that rabbit hole quite recently, and I'm much more of a synth thing. If the camera was behind me, you'd see that there were actually synths all over the place rather than modular. I got into modular, as I've said before, as an effects rack more than anything. I wanted filters that I could patch in, and I have this Expert Sleepers interface which just allows me to send stuff in and out of the door through Euro rack things. So mainly the filters and some bits and pieces. And I have a little sequencer now. I decided to build a techno machine, which seems to be the most useful, apart from ambient stuff. Techno seems to lend itself to Euro rack really nicely as well. And there are kind of off-the-shelf techno dance Euro rack or modular machines you can buy. So I decided to build one of those for me. And my sequencer is a launch code, which is the simplest possible sequencer you can get. It's tiny. I wish I could show it to you, but it's that size in modular.
Right.
It has 5 tracks, and you push it, and it will cycle around 16 beats without any lights, but you just tap it, and it will remember what you're tapping. So you can get this basic kind of sequence going in it, and you use it for 4 to the floor kick drums and offbeat hi-hats, the odd clap, and that's, or maybe some kind of random cowbell or whatever you want to use.
Yeah.
And it's a 909 style tactile interface would be really useful in here. The downside is there's not enough room in most people's modular rigs for it. If I mean, there's a school of thought of which I'm in, which is to try and keep your modular rig as small as possible. There's obviously the other school of thought which says have an absolutely massive one. He who dies with the most modules wins approach. But in general, if you're going to go out and do the DJing live set, 1 or 2 modules, so you're using up a lot of space with this thing. But I think it's great. I mean, the RD9, everyone probably knows the RD9. That's Behringer's 909.
Yes.
Replace or clone, if you like, which everyone's going to buy because the 909 remains the most iconic thing.
Yeah.
But it is an easy thing to program as well. So unlike, say, the TB303 or something, which is a pig to program until you get used to it, the 909 was one of the 808, I guess, bought in the 16 buttons. So you've got your bar with the buttons across, and you just tap the beat, select the instrument, tap the beat you want, decide whether it's an accent or not. And you're off. And that is very, very modular in its approach. And there isn't really anything on the market that does that in modular at the moment. There are, big things where you can switch the beats on and adjust the pitch and the length. And there are smaller things like this. And there are computery modules that allow you to do it amongst many other stuff. But I think it's a really cool idea. And I would be, I'd be seriously tempted. If only because a lot of modular users out there have a kick drum module and a hi-hat module and a clap module, those little tip-top units or whatever. So they've got the basics of a drum machine going on, and you are limited. So unless you're plugging something external in, you're using up channels just for a kick drum, hence my little side cheap unit that does it. I think this is a perfect complement if you've got the space for it to your dance module, really.
Yeah. Cryss, you've dabbled in Eurorack. Does this appeal?
Yeah, I think it would have an appeal. I hate working with sequencers. I don't mind. I like listening to sequenced music, but I can't get into it. But I think the advantage for somebody like me who's not really into sequencers so much would be that you've got one unit that can do it, and if you spend your time learning that unit, then that thing can be used with any piece of other gear that you have. And so that's a pretty attractive prospect. So I'm not having to learn how to use a sequencer on the OB6 and the Moog1 and this and that, or my other things that don't have it. It's like you could just learn one unit really well, understand how to use it, and connect it to whatever you need to connect it. And then if you need to expand, you just get a second one running more gear if you wanted to do that. So that might be something that where this becomes really popular, because you want to learn the synth and you want to learn how to program it, all that kind of stuff. And then it's not like effects, where effects are so basic that once you have a handle on it, there's nothing to learn really with the sequencers and how they work on this specific piece of gear versus this other one. As Dominic was saying, that there's all these different styles that you end up spending a lot of time doing that. So if that can cut down, or if you end up with a synthesizer, let's say, that doesn't have a very good sequencer. I think the opsix only has, it's somewhere around like 16 steps or something.
16, yeah.
And people want more, like they want to really build something out, like that can't do it. Then having an external sequencer, you're not learning the Korg way. You've already got this thing that you've spent a lot of time with, and maybe it has whatever 200, 500 steps or whatever that you need.
Yeah. Ben, would you rather go for one of these, or would you go for the RD9 desktop version?
Well, normally I would just go for the desktop version because I'm not really that bothered about modular and stuff. But because I've got this tip-top rack thing here with nothing in it at all, building a modular drum machine is on my list of things to do.
Okay.
So this fits in perfectly with that. It's like couldn't be better timing, really. So, but yeah, maybe I will look at this a bit more closely and possibly get one, and then mix in a couple more, like we were saying earlier about the hi-hat modules and bass drum specific things. You can get something that's like uniquely for you. I've got this like yearning to have real analog sounding drums, like really like early Kraftwerk style drum sounds in some music that I'm working on.
I've got a Mattel Synsonics here if you want to borrow it.
Well, that's it. I've got that electron analog rhythm thing, and it's not really satisfied that desire, you know what I mean? It's like I need something a bit more raw and where you can hear the electronics and stuff. That it's a bit tame for what I wanted, so I might sell that and invest in one of these sequencers and some nice modules and see how I get on.
Yeah, modular's perfect for that. It's absolutely perfect for building your own drum machine.
That's exactly your own synth.
And for you get a couple of synth modules in there if you want, one for a bass line, one for a lead line, an arpeggiator. I mean, it is brilliant. It was great when I first got into it because I really wanted these crazy delays and proper filters where I could just reach over and twist a knob and that kind of stuff. Because the ambient stuff is lovely, but it doesn't really kind of get me. And then I suddenly thought, well, I could do with a better kick drum, and I did exactly what you're describing. I've got a Joe Mox kick drum module, and I've got this Schweiman 4-channel filter. And it has an overdrive switch on it, and that is together is just monstrous. It's fabulous, anything you put through this stuff, and just those, and you think, well, I'll just add a hi-hat or whatever, but it is unique, and you can get those tiny little but very cutting little drum sounds, or you could get these monster great big fat banging ones. So absolutely, but it's an expensive rabbit hole, isn't it? So you really
hence why I'm sticking clear.
I think that's what's put me off.
No, I mean, this doesn't even. I mean, I like that they're doing this, but this doesn't turn me. It's not turned me yet, and I shall resist modular as long as I possibly can. While we're talking about drums, let's talk about this one. This is from Oblivion Sound Lab. So this is the new Hex drum. Doesn't take a genius to work out what inspired this one. Hexagonal electronic drums of the Simmons variety. Have to say though, this does sound really, really good. Let's see if we can just get a little audio clip of this in here. Should have really queued this up properly, shouldn't I? There we go. Have to say, it really does sound very much. And you got the controls here, which there you go. That's what you want.
Sounds great.
It does. I mean, I must admit, for what is this? $29 at the moment, $39 normally. 7 voices, stereo, multi-channel or all multi-channel output, 3 analog-inspired oscillator shapes, MIDI mapping with MIDI Learn. Assignable voice labels, choke groups, 40 drum kit presets, all can be automated from the host door. Available on Mac and Windows. There is a free trial which will just give you a little bit of silence every 45 seconds, but I think you can kind of guess It's that. Oh, I love that. I think to me, it's like, it's like FM. It takes me back to a time when I was just like happy, and it's just a lovely sound. So I would rather buy this than an RD9 or whatever, because I love this. It's $29, yeah, and it doesn't take up any more room on this desk, which I can't fit anything else onto. Anybody got any sort of thoughts on this one?
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
It's good. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Our first drummer in my very first kind of proper band. I say it wasn't really proper. It was never successful before my career kind of grew. Got the job because he had a Simmons SDS5 kit, and his dad had like a barn outside his house where you could rehearse, and it had a heater.
He's the ideal person to have, even if they're shit.
Exactly. Yeah. He didn't have a van, but that was the only thing missing from the package.
Yeah.
But and it does sound, immediately you put that on, that just sounds like that kit.
Yeah.
Which is great, but it does sound really warm and like proper. So whether they're generating this stuff from scratch internally, or whether they're basing it on samples, or a bit of both, it definitely does the job.
It is synthesis, not samples.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worked. It's worked, definitely.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm doing a couple of mixes for an artist at the moment, which is disco tinged. And so those toms, I was actually searching around for toms that sounded exactly like that, just some samples around, and this would have been perfect for it. And funnily enough, that was quite hard to make from scratch, to be honest. So. Yeah, perfect, and that kick sounds pretty huge.
I mean, as an avid drummer, the fact that you can MIDI map everything on this, I can just map it to my kit downstairs and have a Simmons kit in an electronic kit without all the hassle of having a Simmons kit, which I remember playing one, and after about half an hour my wrists were just like, oh god, because it was just like hitting concrete slabs. It was compared to today's stuff. But there was a band around the local area here, sort of Ipswich area, in the 80s, that had a Simmons kit, and he was just like, everyone was like, oh, they're really good, because look at the drums, it's the same ones that Culture Club use on top of the pops. And so they must be good. I don't think they were, but yeah, it looked amazing. And that's, I think, let's be honest, that's really what most people got Simmons drums for, because they look the biz. Ben,
I had the Roland one, where they were triangles.
Oh yeah.
That was rubbish as well, but yeah, I like this. I think it sounds good. I've got some Simmons samples, but that sounds, I don't know, it's got some chunk behind it, hasn't it? It's a decent sound. So yeah, they've done a good job there. And
will this fit into your new project?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Get
80s
that on,
inspired.
Yeah, get that on some Duran Duran laughing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just slap a bit of reverb on. Everyone's a winner.
Yeah.
Any thoughts in this one, Cryss?
Yeah. So I bought it. And I really like it. The sound is great. As I said before, it's synthesized, not samples. The only problems, first, the interface is great. I like the way that it looks. It's easy to remap. It's dead simple. I haven't cracked the manual yet for it. The two things that maybe make it a little bit harder to use, there's no patterns in it, so you have to make up your own MIDI patterns or import them. The one oddity about doing that is this doesn't have any crash, or I don't think it has a ride either. I think it has open and closed hi-hats, but no crashes or ride. So when you're bringing stuff in, you have to remap or figure something else out. So I haven't been able to spend enough time with it yet to see what I could do programming it myself, because it has 3 toms. So I'm thinking maybe you could get by with 2 toms and make one a crash or a ride and see how that works out, and then map it to, say, I've got Easy Drummer 2 and already have a ton of MIDI patterns. So what little I did experiment with just taking MIDI patterns out of Easy Drummer 2 or Logic Drummer, dropping it into there, remapping it. But I wish some of that process was just a little bit quicker, easier. But I think if I spend some time with it and get a setup where it works, that will probably it'll probably get be used quite a bit. Like I said, the sound of it, and as you guys were commenting, the warmth of it. If you're into some of those old, vintage electronic drum sounds, but you don't want to do an 808 or a 909 or a 606 or whatever, like this is the way to go. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, and for $29 you can't go wrong, really, can you?
No.
So let's do a couple of quick little things. So I want to get a plug in because I have a platform so I can do this. Let me just bring up my screen. So those that know me or know of me know that I do podcasts for Sound on Sound magazine, and we launched one last week. And this is one that of all the ones I've done so far, this was the one this is why I'm doing this. Don Lewis and Ned Augustenborg. So Ned's a documentary filmmaker. He actually started out in sports TV in the US for ESPN and lots of things, but he has this passion for electronic music, and he wanted to tell Don's story. And Don Lewis, if you don't know who Don Lewis is, why not? But this will tell you basically, and they've had a movie made about him called The Ballad of Don Lewis. So in brief, Don was this musician. He served some time in the Navy, and when he came out, he decided he wanted to build an instrument, but he didn't just want one synthesizer. He wanted lots of synthesizers and drum machines, and he figured out a way of making these machines talk to each other. And this was way before MIDI. So he is an engineer. He created, he based it around a Hammond organ, and then he's got Jupiter 6s, Jupiter 4s, he's got SEMs in there, ARP 2600s, ARP Pro Soloists, a TR-808, and then loads of other stuff. And he got it all to, he could control everything from this central 3-manual keyboard that was based on this Hammond organ, and he called it the Live Electronic Orchestra, and he was blowing audiences away. Unfortunately, the Musicians Union didn't like this, so they banned him, and they were even picketing him outside venues. Throw into the mix, he was getting lots of racial abuse as well, and it's just his struggle to kind of just be allowed to play music. That was inspiring. Then, of course, he befriends Kakahashi-san from Roland, and they start talking about MIDI, and it's Kakahashi-san's already said that Don inspired the work that they did to get MIDI into our hands. So he's kind of responsible for all of that, and he's such an amazing guy. So the podcast is on SOS, the SOS website, soundonsound.com. It's about 50 minutes long. We talked for almost twice that. Had to edit a bunch out, but there's some really good stuff. And on a personal note, he was responsible for a lot of patches on the DX7, the original one. So he's an amazing guy, and I hope you enjoy it. It's free. soundonsound.com/podcasts, and you can get links to that, and there's links to the trailer for the film. You can buy the film on DVD through Amazon and various places. It's a really, really good documentary. So quick plug for that one. Shall we do the weekly poll now? We're sort of halfway through the show. Just have a quick. We kind of touched on it. I made a bit of a boo-boo there because we were going on about Aftertouch, and the poll this week on the website. Let me just bring that up for you guys. So I will get faster at this, I promise. So the weekly poll was. What missing features on today's currently made synthesizers most frustrates you? So this, clearly born of the news that Korg's, latest two offerings had no aftertouch. So we put some options down. There's quite a few options that were put on there, but let's do it in reverse order. No MIDI 2.0 yet. I think maybe it's a bit early. D-Beam, somebody's having a laugh. Sampling, there isn't really any sampling keyboards. Sample playback maybe, but not sampling. Patch storage, I don't know whether that's patch storage period or quantity. High quality effects, screens for naming presets.
Yes.
A decent key bed, full MIDI implementation in, out and through. which, yeah, I have to say...
That's fair enough.
Yeah, definitely. Computer integration, I think that means, having an application like Modal, with their app, that kind of thing. Ribbon controller, always a nice thing to have. Number of keys, we've spoken about this, 37, yes. So on. Extra outputs, I think that's a good one. Software editor available at release. That's good, yeah. MPE control, maybe we're jumping the gun, but yeah, it's early days. And then we get into the big boys. So the top 5, voice cant. Seems to have dropped off. I mean, I've certainly spoken of, when I started being able to afford to buy synthesizers, it was in the days of 64 or 128 note polyphony, 16 or 32 part multi-timbrality, and I just thought, every synthesizer will be like this and it will just get bigger, and it hasn't. It's gotten smaller.
I think the reason for that is people aren't trying to have an all singing, all dancing keyboard anymore.
No,
I think
it's been broken down into you pick and choose, don't you? Yeah. Multi-timbrality, so there's that, and then of course aftertouch. A long keyboard, more than 2 or 3 octaves, and polyphonic aftertouch is the number one thing that people think they're missing. And I think it speaks to what we were talking about earlier on, that aftertouch is still something that lots of people want. And I think ASM have again, with their kind of groundbreaking synth, with its groundbreaking keyboard technology and ribbon control. Here's a synth, £1,200, I think it is. Polyphonic aftertouch, ribbon controller, MPE support, all this stuff. Any thoughts on those? Do they mirror, Dom? Does that mirror your kind of opinion on that?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just trying to think what I really miss, and performance wise, I mean, even if the cheaper end received and responded to polyphonic aftertouch, that would be a step forward. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know, but obviously MPE based stuff is always going to do that kind of thing, but polyphonic aftertouch is part of the basic MIDI spec, and so it would be nice if they responded that way, and it's a really nice, easy to use performance kind of thing. I do like beam type controllers. I wouldn't want one on every synth, but I don't know. There's nothing obvious. I'm just looking around, seeing for stuff I use. I still use a D50 as my master keyboard because I like the way the keyboard, the feel of it.
Yeah.
And it does have. I think it's just standard aftertouch. But no, there's nothing huge. I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of storing patches. I wouldn't expect to be able to store patches on. I either would expect to store them or not. So clearly there are, especially modular type of things, where storing patches is not an option. And some of the cheaper end keyboards, that's fine. But if you're going to store patches, you need plenty of space to store them. There should be more voices available than there are, because it's not. There's a gap at the moment where, I mean, I can play keyboards, and if I play a chord with, I don't know, 6 or 8 fingers, and I go and move it to another chord, I get voice drops. We're having a discussion about the new Prophet 5 and the Prophet 10 coming out. That really shouldn't happen on today's keyboards. That's if I wanted to limit the polyphony, that's great, but I shouldn't be having to worry about losing a few notes from a chord that I'm playing to keep the voices going. So it should at least be 16, 20 or something. And the 16. There's something about a 16 cycle sequencer with 8 note polyphony or something, which is just the norm, and has been the norm for about 50 years.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that all about?
Yeah. Aaron in the chat room says, crazy that synths with 80s technologies are considered groundbreaking in 2020, which is a very fair point. Cryss, what do you think? What do those reflect your wish lists?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the things that I always complain about, polysynths with less than 8 voices. To agree with Dominic that, why can't 16 or 20 be standard these days? It's in 2020, but like the Polybrute, it looked really cool. I really liked it. Sounds good. Yes, I can make music with 6 voices, but I shouldn't have to. And having spent a bunch of time with the Prophet 6 and Obi 6 lately, having a screen like for some really basic things, patch naming. So even if you're not, I mean, if you're performing live, that to me would be just exceptionally useful. I very rarely play keyboards live, but being able to see, what it is and not have to remember dozens of numbers. But when you're creating, like for me, when I'm recording or something, I'm going through my presets that I've made, like the name of it's kind of the tough thing to do. Like it's easier to program the patch than to name it, because then you got to figure out what does this sound like.
Yeah.
But then you end up saving some unusual name, and you remember it, and it's easy to work with, and it's easy to remember which ones sound like what. But then also some of the basic like modulation routings. So there's been some synthesizers that have come out that have missed like one or two or three of these pretty key features for me, which would be like voice count, having a screen that has something more than numbers on it, because I want to be able to name patches and be able to see modulation routings or something like that. And then, of course, we always talk about aftertouch and why in 2020 are so many of those three things missing from modern synthesizers. Same thing with the Super 6, the UDO. Like, oh man, it sounds amazing. Do I want to deal with setting up modulation routings that way? No, I don't. And everybody's different, and I understand that other people have different ways of doing it. And thinking about people's personalities, if you're more of an audio or a kinesthetic learner, I'm more of a visual learner, and I see things and I visualize it. So not being able to visualize it on a synthesizer makes things more difficult for me. So big screens, the bigger the better for me.
Yeah. Do you think maybe that we live in a world now where keyboard controllers are quite popular? Everyone seems to have a keyboard. I mean, I've got one here that's small, it fits on the desk, but I've, that can do a whole bunch of stuff. It's got aftertouch, it's got velocity, it's got faders and pads and rotaries and transport controls. And with software synthesizers over the last kind of 20 years, we've moved into this realm where that hardware aspect is no longer that important to manufacturers, and we as musicians will probably use software synthesizers or modules or small things, and so the necessity for all of these things might have, I mean, I'm not saying this is how it is, I'm just kind of speculating that maybe we should all just get our favorite controller that has aftertouch, that has this and has that, and as long as the synthesizers respond to it, then we're good to go. Maybe that's driven it. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that totally. My main bugbears are really keys. Everybody seems to have this thing of making 3-octave keyboards, and a polyphonic synth should be 5 octaves in my book. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Aftertouch is needed for me anyway. Like Cryss said, the ability to name patches, because I love the Prophet 6, but you've got like 999 like numbers that you've got to remember or whatever it is. It's a bit insane. That, I mean, you can work around it with a patch name script in Cubase, whatever, name them instead, but you shouldn't have to, really. It's no trouble to stick a screen on things. And voice count, I'm just unhappy with everything from this.
You're a miserable northerner. It's in your DNA.
Right, I'm not happy about the keyboard sizes. They need to be bigger. I'm not happy about the lack of aftertouch. I'm not happy about not being able to give the sounds a name. The voice count doesn't bother me as much as everybody else, because I like mono synths as well, so I'm not really bothered there. I don't need it be multi-timbral, and patch memory, like Behringer's redoing all these synths now. Surely it's got to be possible to stick patch memory on them. That would have been the killer. That if they'd have made a Pro 1 with patch memories on it, then
well, the SH101 Roland Boutique is in my humble opinion, much better than the original one, which was one of the first synths I ever bought new. And that does have patch memory, and it's got a 4-voice paraphonic. It is just better, And I'm not going to sell my SH101 because it was the first synth, and it's got a soft spot in my heart. But that's a really good example of a really good replication plus, if you like. And you're right. I mean, either you're being true to cloning something, or you're making a clone slightly better, and it's difficult, isn't it? But clearly the boutiques, they tried to push it a little bit harder, certainly with the 101 anyway.
Because I only learned today that the new Prophet 5 and 10 Rev 4s don't have stereo audio.
No, it's mono output. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Honestly, how gutsy is that? Gutsy.
I mean, you've got to have
thousands of pounds. You don't need a stereo cable. There's one socket on the back,
Yeah,
but I was thinking about it. I mean, honestly, when you're studio working, I tend to try and keep everything mono and use the effects to make it stereo, and that's what synths are doing. Everything is mono. Okay, so the stereo you're getting from anything in the world is the sound reflecting in a different way before it hits your ears. I can't think of a sound source apart from hi-fis and music where it is coming out in stereo. So where you have a lack of studio effects, that's great. But when you've got some really good plugins or like a decent reverb or whatever, I've got the Bricasti. I'm really lucky to have the Bricasti reverb here. It sounds amazing. So I'm just going to turn all the effects off the synth and use that on it, and it sounds great. The trouble is, if you go out and try a synth with one socket, it doesn't sound any good in the shop. It doesn't sound any good as a demo. As soon as you've got effects on it, it sounds great. But what a gut! That's it
is ballsy. But to be fair, in their defence, every demo I've heard of the new Prophet 5, Alex Ball did one just the other day. It does sound great. Yeah. And I wouldn't have thought, oh god, that's lacking. Another channel. Interesting. Right, well, there you go. That's this week's poll. We'll have another one. We'll throw that up in the next day or two onto the Pro Synth Network Facebook page. If you are watching us, do come and join us on the Facebook page. It's just search Pro Synth Network and you'll find it. Ask to join the group. There's a couple of obligatory questions just to make sure that you're a human being and that you're going to play nicely, and then that's it. You can come in and we'll do the weekly poll discussion every week. It seems to have got people talking and interacting, which is always good. What shall we do now? Tell you what, let's have a chat with Dominic. Let's put Dominic on the spot. So for those of us that don't know who you are, what you do, I mean, Cryss, for example, wasn't too familiar with you and your work, and the first thing that popped into my head was, and it was completely irrelevant to somebody that lives in California, do you remember E17 and that Christmas #1 they had? And of course that was you, wasn't it? Or partly yourself. But you're not just a writer and a musician and a producer. You're a performer. You're an app developer. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get into this world of music?
I'm a slightly strange breed, really, because I've crossed the music and the business world a little bit. So I co-wrote Stay Another Day with E17, but prior to that I started playing keyboards for Boy George just after he left Culture Club in the not the happiest years of his life, it has to be said, and his kind of good mate Marilyn as well, and that was my introduction. So as an 18-year-old kind of moved to London because a mate of mine said, "Can you play keyboards in this band?" That was quite an introduction to the world. It was brilliant. So we were guest listing on all the brilliant clubs. There were clubs like Taboo, that whole post-new romantic going into some kind of crazy world. So that was my introduction, and I was a live keyboard player. And after that, I started playing in a band that was managed by the same management. We signed to Warner's, and it was good because I'm classically trained at school on the piano, and I got to grade 8. But what you do as a piano player is you get to learn how to play music that's put in front of you, and that's not the same as a guitarist coming in and playing a riff and saying, "I'll play along to that," because you're like, "Well, hang on a minute, I'm going to work out how that works." It's a different mode of playing, and I almost had to relearn how to play to be in bands. So I did this band that I said before, where we had the drummer with his Simmons kit, and that was kind of a hobby. And then jumped from there into this world of, you know, proper record companies and management, and you know, being in a pop star's house with people camped outside screaming and stuff, which is brilliant, I might say. If you're an 18-year-old kid, that's quite an introduction to London. And then I went from there, really. And so there was a band that came out the back of that, which signed to Warner's. The singer... it was a band called Eric and the Good Feeling, which never really took off. However, the learning experience was amazing, because we got the record deal. The guy was a Motown staff writer, prodigy, keyboard playing singer, amazing singer. And so as a second keyboard player, effectively, in this band, he would just come and say, "Okay, Dominic, go and play this." And I'd be like, okay, and I'd just learn it, and I'd be like, and I tried it, and I realised, looking back, he was probably kind of taking the mickey a little bit, but he constantly pushed me, and I constantly learned, you know, because I didn't want to get sacked out the band, and that was such great fun, you know. And he kind of, in his own way, taught me how to play, and he was really funky and really just a brilliant guy. And so I spent a couple of years in that band, and by the time kind of that finished, I was all right. I was a good keyboard player, and obviously we ended up recording a record with Stephen Hague, who's a fabulous producer who just finished True Faith by New Order, which is an amazing song. He was doing the Pet Shop Boys, Always on My Mind, and all that stuff. So I was in and out the studio. I was like Jack the Lad, you know. So that was great. So that was my intro, and I moved from there. People started booking me for keyboard sessions. And funnily enough, the keyboard sessions became more and more programming. So I've always been quite technical, but I used to have to pretend not to be nerdy at school, and when I was doing music first off, because it was really uncool. And it's so funny to see how this, I mean, I'm just over 50, right? But it's really, really weird to see how the nerdy bit in school is now quite important in the world.
Yes.
So being a creative nerd wasn't a thing back there. You had to kind of make the choice. But I started doing more and more work for PWR, Stock Aitken and Waterman, and DJs and stuff, using Akai samplers more than anything to do time stretching and pitch shifting. So nowadays you can bung a loop into Ableton and you can make it faster or stretch it or whatever with one button. Back then, you really had to stick it in a hardware sampler from Akai, and you had to do calculations in percentage over, you know. So if Danny Rampling or someone would come in and say, okay, here's my 3 favourite records. I want to take the loop off of that. I want to take the vocal hook off of that and the string line off of that, and you need to make them all work together. That's actually a technical challenge, not a musical challenge. So his brain knew exactly what were going to make people dance, but technically, obviously, he knew sort of what he wanted, but had no ability of getting there. So I was the bloke in the studio who'd be doing that on a Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd be tuning vocals in PWL because they couldn't get the singer in, or because it was faster for me to do some pitch changing and stuff than it would be to get the singer back in, or whatever, all this stuff. So I worked with Danny and Paul Oakenfold for a bit, and I did lots and lots of sessions, including mixes. I mean, we did Can I Kick It, the single mix of that, which was brilliant for Tribe Called Quest. I worked with a couple of DJs called the Boiler House Boys, who are the probably the best DJs you've never heard of. They're sort of DJs, and we did a lot of rap for them. Can I Kick It was probably the pinnacle of that. But I've also done stuff with, you know, loads and loads of remixes back then from Pop Willie itself and the Shaman.
Sure.
And I spent a year in Germany working with Alphaville, funnily enough, for a while.
Oh, right.
So I did that. And then the culmination of that was working with E17, and I started songwriting. And obviously Stay Another Day was one of a lot of tunes that we ended up working with Tony Mortimer on. And obviously was huge. Was kind of the beginning of the end for the band, ironically, when you get that big. And it all went a little bit bonkers for everybody when I had that moment when the postman comes up the path whistling your tune, and you think, I think Paul McCartney said that's when he knew he made it, and it happened. And I was like, wow, you know, this is great. I'm really proud of that song, and it's, you know, it's touched a few people. And it's
because every year we hear that song.
Yes,
regardless.
Yes, it comes out on all of and it's not about Christmas. It wasn't about Christmas. It was a really interesting experience. We had Tom Watkins, who's now passed away. He's the manager, who's a very Marmite kind of character.
Yes.
But he was very specific. He did know his stuff for all his potential faults. I mean, he said, I need 10 songs. You've got 10 days to do these songs. I need the ballads. I need the dance track. I need kind of reggae track. Literally, this is what I want. I want a football chant track. So I met Tony on the Monday, and by Monday evening, we'd written and demoed Stay Another Day to a point where pretty much everything on the demo ended up on the final release as well. Quite astonishing.
Yeah.
And then we did a song a day for the rest of those 10 days, and 7 of the 10 ended up on the album. I mean, it was incredible. Yeah. I'd also kind of stepped back a little bit, and I was just beginning to get into tech and multimedia, and I'd started to work with a couple of friends on a company that was taking audio onto computers effectively in the very early days. And so I was going to go on holiday for a couple of weeks, and then massive management rang up and said, can you come and work with these guys at E17? And I love the band, actually. They'd already had an album out.
Yeah.
And they said the band were a bit annoyed that for the first album they were kind of locked out of the studio. So can you come and work with them and write some songs? And I actually took that to mean, can you keep the band happy whilst we make the second album in the studio?
Gotcha, yeah.
And so it wasn't until day 3. I mean, good job we did start writing songs. When they rang up and they said, can you send us over what you've got? And I was like, oh, you really want to hear this stuff, do you? Without realising we'd already written the killer tune. Because you just don't realise.
No.
You don't realise when you're doing this stuff, whether it's good or bad or whatever, And so we churned the stuff out, and it was a really good vibe. It was the height of summer. I was going to go on holiday. I didn't really care. Tony was in a band with screaming kids. He was living the life. And Rob Keane, who's the third writer who I'd worked with for many, many years, is always a super fun guy to work with. So we just had a massive laugh, And I remember with Stay Another Day, there's a hook on the end that goes, "Stay now."
Yeah.
That wasn't on there at all. And we finished this thing, and Tony had just bought a new Range Rover, and he wanted to go driving around London waving at people and stuff. So it was like, screw this, let's go off on the Range Rover. And I was like, there's definitely something more. We need something more on this. I can hear something. And I was going through this period of watching what made successful tunes. And I knew there was a couple of things. One is, if you listen to most successful tunes, the chorus, the line is sung as if you'd said it. So Stay Another Day.
Yeah.
Or Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, or you don't sing Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. You're phrasing it is exactly the same way as you sing it the same way you'd phrase it.
Yeah.
And you'll find if you listen to a lot of good songs, that's true. So it's a massive tip. And the other one was, you can always make it better. Obviously, you can go and spend 6 months on something and do the whole Trevor Horn kind of production, and he does make it better every time. But there's always one more thing you can add, as long as it's a big thing, not a subtle thing. And I was like, let's stick something on the chorus. So we just, just stick that with mic'd up, bang it on. And then we went off in his Range Rover. And it's really funny looking back, because I forgot about that till the song came out, that bit is now really the icing on the cake of that whole tune.
Yeah.
That took it. But like I say, it wasn't meant to be a Christmas song. The producers, Phil Harding and Ian Curnow, are exceptional producers. And they took the demo, they took a lot of the demos, they kept true to a lot of the stuff on there. And they just turned it into absolute magic, and the rest is history. I remember getting a pre-release of the CD, and it had a sticker on the front saying, "Includes the single Stay Another Day." And I thought, oh, brilliant! It's going to be a single. That's good,
Yeah.
And then obviously it came in at like number 3, and then up to number. It was
massive. It was absolutely massive. Yeah, I remember that coming out, and it had that kind of thing about it with, like, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Power of Love was never a Christmas song, but was released at the right time. Yeah. Throw a few bells on there, and hey, there you go. There's a Christmas song.
Yeah, the bells are the masters, and I like that. I think always on my mind by the Pet Shop Boys was a Christmas song, although it doesn't tend to get played so much. The Pogues isn't really a Christmas song.
No.
I think that's my favourite one.
Yeah.
I do quite like that. It's because it conjures a mood rather than smashes you around the face with the fact.
Yeah, but the Pet Shop Boys one was only a hit because there wasn't. ITV did a program about Elvis songs, and they got modern artists to reinterpret.
That's right.
And it came out around Christmas time, and they released it, and because that had been a massive thing, and so it just kind of went to number one. So therefore, it's forever tarnished with the Christmas number one.
And back then, for the petrol, actually, the same was true for E17. They were really only as good as every single that came out. And there wasn't that much faith in the record label. Almost, certainly with E17 at the time, it was like, this is probably going to be the last one. You know, this is, wow, that one's done well. There's probably one more in it, you know. And you are dealing with a lovable bunch of rascal kids at that time who, they're not massive songwriters or anything, you know, and it just worked, that whole lifestyle, that it just absolutely worked. And they, a lot of talent in there. Brian is an incredible singer. Absolutely incredible, for all his faults and problems that he's gone through in later life. That guy's voice is unbelievable. If he just walks into a room and sings, you're like, where does that come from? He's not the biggest bloke in the world.
No.
This sound just comes out. So, and Tony's a great writer, really good rapper. Ironically, Tony always wanted to sing and Brian always wanted to rap, but you know, it's just the way that it is.
So what takes you into the world of app design? Because that's kind of where your current thing is.
Yeah, I took a break then because I started to go a little bit mad at that point. It's quite hard to follow something like that, and I always like to be doing something where there's no ceiling, so there's always the possibility of you know, excelling at something. And I wasn't sure if I spent the rest of my life trying to write another big selling single like that A, I'd ever do it, it's extremely unlikely, and B, it wouldn't actually be a real chain around my neck, you know. I mean, you watch a lot of the artists that I've worked with. I always wanted to be a pop star when I was a kid, and I realised I wasn't good enough to be that, so I managed to form be a part of the music industry in the background, you know, and that the artist would be the front person. And they're under so much pressure. You've got this triangle of artist, then management, then record label, then promoters, then seller, and you know, people don't realise how strong you have to be to succeed as an artist. Never mind talent and all the rest of it, which you know you have to have as well. The pressure on that person for their time and their energy, you know, as apparent from you've got 10 days to write the second album, you know, because that's it, you know. You can see what it's like. And so I was quite glad, but even so, as a behind the scenes person, I did think that I might, you know, I've seen a lot of artists go completely bonkers. Not all of them have come back from it, and some of it's been quite comedic at times, but probably, you know, reasonably tragic. But so I just took a break, and I was in the middle of forming this company with a couple of friends, and we got into, I was kind of the music front person and they were more technical, and we ended up building the playout system for Sky TV's radio stations.
Oh, right.
So Sky had 80 channels of audio at one stage, and they'd have a rock channel and an opera channel and a hotel channel as part of their offering, and they'd beam it into your house via satellite. And we built the playout centre that actually managed that and streamed 80 channels of audio up to the satellite. We did it with jukeboxes of CDs that were designed for karaoke machines, because there wasn't disk space storage back then to actually do it. So these robots would be pulling CDs out and slotting them in to play them out. And that was my introduction to being a sort of techie audio person. And I had a label that I set up. We built a studio in Chiswick. We continued doing a lot of music, and it was brilliant fun. We had some success with that. I continued writing, but I always had this slightly entrepreneurial business side of it that went on. We bought a nuclear bunker and set up a web host, secure web host. We were the first in the UK to do that stuff. That's still going. And then, weirdly, I kind of switched about 10 years ago, and I bumped into an old mate of mine who was the editor of Stuff magazine. He was originally Stuff magazine, but he'd set up Maxim magazine in the US, which was by far the most popular magazine in the US for a long time, you know, the Lads Mag era in the US. It's just bonkers. And he was an English guy, worked with another guy called Ed Needham, who was the editor of Rolling Stone. And they'd started getting involved. The magazine had been sold, Dennis Publishing had been sold. They'd moved back to the UK, and they were looking at doing web stuff. And funnily enough, it was a lot in the gambling industry, because a lot of the clients that advertised on Maxim were gambling, like Ladbrokes and those kind of people. And I ended up building basically a kind of Google system for gamblers or gambling companies, not for gambling. So I'd done the drugs. No, I hadn't done the drugs. I've done the rock and roll. I've done the gambling. I hadn't done the drugs, which is good. Everyone else had done the drugs. So I kind of got it all covered. And I dropped. I put all my music stuff in storage, and I just concentrated on this. And we basically built a company that was a clever technical marketing company for gambling companies, which William Hill bought about 2-3 years ago. So it was a real success. We built it up. We had 170 people programming for us at the time, and we'd do things like, the adverts you see where it would be in the middle of a football match, and it would say the odds are 2-1 for
Ray Winston. Yeah.
So I built the system that would pump the odds onto the screen in real time.
Okay.
All the clever stuff.
I wondered how they did that.
And well, I know.
Yeah.
And other stuff like you would see adverts for a free £25 bet if you open an account with Betfair or whatever,
Yeah.
And we would do things like that, but we'd put in scores and live feeds and all sorts, and just clever, funky things. But I'm not really into sport, and I don't gamble. It's a little bit morally bankrupt, the whole industry. So it's like, it was a really interesting thing because it was entrepreneurial. We built it from scratch. We sold it to a huge FTSE 100 company, which is a massive kind of thing to go through. To be at that level in business for a while with something that's your baby was amazing, And then when that had happened, I was like, I better get back into the music a bit more, So I unpacked all the stuff, realised that all the synths and analog stuff I bought new was now worth an absolute fortune. Apparently, even the rubbish bits. It's analog; it must be worth something. And so I did that. And the reason I got all the music kit out was because I decided to downscale everything, take a step back, and do a sleep music app, which I thought I'd do from scratch. And that's where Snuggle Sounds came in. So rather than have teams of programmers and stuff, I just wanted to take a bit of a break. So I'd never done apps before. We'd done some apps for the company, but I generally had a team of people doing them. So I learned iOS programming, and obviously I could do all the music. And the main reason was I've got a 9-year-old daughter, but when she was 4, she was sleeping badly, and if you go onto YouTube and search Lullaby, you'll find things with like literally 40 million plays, and it's absolutely awful. It would keep me awake, So I thought people are coming at this from a lullaby and not really caring about the content. They're just caring about the app. And if I come at it from the music side of things, I can actually make stuff that make people fall asleep because I know what I'm doing. I just need to learn the app side. So
that's something that people rarely brag about.
I was going to say a lot of my music makes people fall asleep, but
I can make people fall asleep.
It's not supposed to.
It took me ages because I'd be typing and I'd just every time. But it works. And interestingly, as part of the app, what I ended up having to do was almost build a sequencer engine inside it, because I realized this music's got to run for 12 hours 24 hours, So if you just recorded pieces of music and chose one, you're either going to get some very obvious loops in it, or you're going to run out of space, because 10 hours of MP3 is 650 megs, right? And if you want 50 tracks, I mean, you just can't do it in a sensible downloadable app. So what I had to do is I had to write all the music and then chop all the music into different samples and play them, firing them off, almost like you can do on Ableton with a trigger. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And then algorithms behind that would say how often something fires off or what comes after what. And it turned into a like an ambient music engine, to be honest. So the next project is going to be taking that engine and doing some other things with it. But brilliant learning experience. And it's been out for a while now, and it's doing great. It's really, people love it. And so I'm just sort of taking another break and doing more and more music again, funnily enough. But what I don't want to be a kind of 50-year-old bloke in the studio with too much kit. It's got to be good, hasn't it?
Well, you're in good company of 50-somethings with lots of gear in their rooms. Exactly. So yeah. No, that's really fascinating stuff. I mean, like I said, I think we said earlier that I have no trouble going to sleep. I actually suffer from sleep apnea, so staying asleep is really not a problem. It's just proper sleep, and unfortunately, there's no app for that. But there's other things like strapping masks to your nose, which is it's unpleasant, but it makes my life brilliant. I would say seriously, it's changed my life. But I do like. I mean, you've got snuggle sounds. There are other kind of calm. Is it calm? Is another one, and there's a bunch of others.
It's a massively busy area. I honestly thought, usual old thing that this is an easy one because people are going to listen to this and it's going to go bonkers. It's now one of the 5 big future sectors that future vertical they call them that people are going to be in. And Calm is spending absolute fortunes. They've got massive backing and it's working. I think Calm's subscription is chunky money.
It's not cheap.
£1.20 app. It's your £50 a year. It's really good.
Yeah, because before this whole pandemic thing, I used to travel to America and to Europe and fly a lot. And before, I think my last trip to Toronto, I treated myself to a set of noise cancelling headphones. And I thought this will be great. And I remember, it really did improve my experience. But I also had there's an app, I can't remember the name of it, that just plays kind of nature sounds and a little bit of just quiet music. You can balance things, and I put that on, and it's seriously, with the noise cancellation getting rid of most of that in-flight noise, and with this, it really does. There is something to it. Absolutely, there's something to it. It's
totally.
It's
and I think what you're saying there, that's the thing that Snuggle does, is allows you to mix and match. So it's also done very well with some of the children with ADHD and sufferers like that, where there is this music pack that schools buy in, which is fundamentally classical music with birds or nature on the top. And it costs them a lot of money and it's pretty basic. And what they found was that some people would love the classical music but be triggered by the sound of the birds, for example. They had no control over it. These are a batch of CDs, and that's how this thing kind of started. So you can turn the birds down or you can turn the music up, and then we started to make it so that you can turn the rain up or change the weather or slow. There's a bus journey because kids in the back of buses fall asleep, but you can speed the bus up, or there's a fan that you can actually turn it from a great big fan into a small fan, and that's the kind of USP that it's got that makes it work. And I think in general, as once AI really starts to pick up, that kind of stuff is really going. So you with your noise cancelling headphones, thinking, well, I've got this nice nature sounds, I've got this music, but let's just push it into the jungle a little bit, or let's make it go quieter as I'm falling asleep. That kind of stuff is
I would love something like that would then, because I love dreams. I don't have nightmares, because even the scary dreams are fun and exciting. But I would love so much to learn that art of lucid dreaming, of being able to influence that. And one of the things I'm told is, if you listen to certain things, it can help you do that. And that's what I'd pay good money for something that allowed me to.
I don't think it's far away. I haven't followed it so closely since the app came out, but there are sleep sensors which you can link to, which will monitor the level of the sleep you're at, and then it comes into its own, because it can tell your
where you are,
stage, your beta waves, or whatever, and then according to that, then start modifying the music. And that's where to me it was starting to get exciting, but I just kind of wanted to put that to bed and get it out and see what's going on. And I think that the whole tactile modular feedback mechanism, so whether you're wearing a watch, your Apple Watch that's checking your heartbeat, or is without doubt the next massive thing.
It's fascinating times. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely.
So if you want to try Snuggle Sounds, it's available on the App Store. The link is on the screen at the moment, but just look for Snuggle Sounds. It's the only one that's there. And that's iOS and Android.
No, just iOS at the moment.
Just iOS.
Looking to do an Android one next, but
excellent stuff.
Yeah, not done it yet.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that. I've learned a lot. We've got about 20 minutes or so. We've got a couple more news items, so we'll save the two big ones till last. Just want to put this one out there because this. So I've been using Virharmonic samples for a little while, and they are incredibly good. They have these two string libraries, Bohemian Violin and Bohemian Cello, and it's all scripted front-end stuff. It works on the UVI platform, and they also have done choirs, virtual choirs, And this is this is nothing new. This has been out for a while now, but you can now pick up their entire choral bundle for €99. It's normally 600. You get everything in there, and it sounds amazing. Unfortunately, all their videos you have to really search through to get a good demonstration. So I'm just going to try and I sort of remember roughly where this was. Here we go. So it uses this libretto feature here, where you've got sounds that you can then combine to make words, and then you can have 3 layers: soloists, trebles, and young men. Sounds a bit weird, but simply said, you put in the words, and then you play the keys on the keyboard, and it scrolls through the words. So for each note, it will change, and you can use the mod wheel and an expression pedal to kind of soften the attacks here and there. It sounds amazing, and it literally is for all of that stuff. It's like 35 gig installed, so it's a pretty hefty library. But it works on the UVI platform, and you don't have to have the Falcon. You can just use it on their free workstation. Really, really impressive stuff for just 99 quid. And as you can see in my basket, I've still got it. I was like, I must go and buy that. It does sound amazing. We've had a huge spate of orchestral sample libraries in recent weeks and months. Does anybody use this kind of thing? I guess it's kind of a niche product, isn't it? Really,
I would use it.
Yeah.
If somebody asked me to do another film soundtrack, especially like a horror one or something, it'd be right up up there in the tools to use for that. So and it's such good value at £99. Just a bit gutted about that other thing now. What about this instead?
What other thing?
That synth anthology thing.
Oh yeah.
I got that, and it's good, but I think this seems even better value.
Yeah,
better value and probably more useful to me because I can do all the synth sounds. I
remember there was a company called Bella D Media, an Italian guy, Giovanni. I remember that when I was doing stuff with Hollow Sun, he approached us for a kind of a collaboration, because he was doing all this stuff on Contact, but he wanted, this was still when Akai hardware samplers was still kind of a thing, and we converted some of his boys' choir into Akai, which I've still got. I don't know if it ever got released. I think we put it onto the Alesis Fusion as well. But it was so nice. But the problem was it was just all oohs, e's and ahs, and no way of kind of giving that thing. And when I've gone through this, although it's not perfect, it fools the brain into thinking that you're hearing the words. And so I guess if you had an actual human singing a track on top of this, the brain would put the two together and merge them, and you would hear the words. And it's very clever stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought. My daughter plays The Sims, and they have this Sims language, which is like real language, but it isn't as well. You're a Sim. And that's exactly what I thought when I it's like, it is saying something, but it's kind of not. And I think you're right. If you had the lead line over the top, and to be honest, I mean, I've been trying to get into do a few more films and stuff, and I've used the Omnisphere choirs.
Yeah.
And they are R's and O's and E's, and it's fine. It's great. This would be a step forward, absolutely a step forward. And there's just something really, really nice about the warmth out of voices like this. Which
absolutely.
UVI are kind of. I only really got into them. I did some research on what I thought would be the best piano sound, and I tried loads out. And I bought their, I think it's Ravenscourt or Ravenscraft or something. And that's the first time I'd really bought that. And then I bought Falcon because it's just brilliant. And their sample player is great. Everyone uses Contact, but their UVI one is really classy.
I've been singing their praises for years, and I still can't understand why they get overlooked so often, because their stuff is great. And the free player means that it doesn't matter what library you buy, you can always use the free player, unlike Contact.
And if you're astonishing.
There's a company called Acoustic Samples. I think they're French, and they've got a great Yamaha C7 library for UVI, which is well worth checking out, and it's incredibly affordable. So if you're looking for an alternative, but they've also got the Urcam prepared piano as well, which is really fun.
Oh, nice.
So that's a UVI owned one, and then they've got the electric Grand, so it's a CP70, I think they sampled. But yeah, they're very detailed and very, very good. But yeah, Virharmonic, and if you should also have a listen to their Bohemian. I'm just trying to see if I get that up on the screen. So they've got Bohemian violin and Bohemian cello, and again, it's it's heavily multi-sampled stuff. But cool. it's the there's lots of key switching involved, but it kind of predicts how you're playing and offers up the right playing technique to suit your. So if you're playing something that's quite rapid, it knows to use the types of samples that are best suited for that. It's very, very clever. Very, very clever indeed, and the cello is just as good. So yeah, they're well worth checking out. But apparently they're selling off all the choral stuff at next to nothing, because they're kind of clearing the way for a new development platform, and they're going to work on that. So yeah, nice. $99, Virharmonic.com. Right, I guess the two big sort of software announcements this week are. Let me just bring this up onto the screen. I promise I will get better and quicker at doing this, or find a better way of doing it. So first of all, Ableton Live 11 has been announced. Now, I really am going to have to defer to it, or you guys, if you are Ableton users, if you're not with Screwed, because I just cannot get Live. I've tried. I really have tried. People keep telling me how wonderful it is, and it doesn't fit my brain. You know what I mean? It just doesn't fit my MO. So anyway, they've brought out version 11, and it's supposed to have some really great comping features. Do any of you guys use Live on a regular basis? Dominic's nodding his head.
Thank God for that. Because
So come on, you must have had a look at this. Is this a worthwhile upgrade? Yeah.
Well, yeah. My go-to is still Logic. So it was Cubase in the very early days. Well, Notator and Creator and all that way back. But Cubase 3 was the first one with the left to right track layout, and then pretty much eMagic and Logic from then on up until now. I got into Ableton about 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago, just to try and change my workflow. I realised I was getting a bit stale and kind of doing this, load the same old template, do the same old song, let's just do this. So I did two things. I bought a Deluge to get out of the box and just, force myself to come up with some other bits and pieces. And that then obviously led me down to the rabbit hole into modular, because it's got CV and gate output, but that's another story. And I also bought Ableton. I had a few mixes to do from stuff that people were sending to me in Ableton, but I also wanted to make that jump and just see what it was all about. And the live, what's it called? The Max for Live stuff appeals to me with my tech head on as well. Mm-hmm. And so I got into it quite quickly. I would still end up using Logic for mixing stuff. Finally, in the end, I've never mastered anything out of Ableton, but I've definitely used Ableton for getting grooves together and as a workflow of just building stuff up. I probably, similar to you, think in terms of a left to right approach, beginning to the end of the song with Logic. What I do like is this little battle going on now between Logic and Ableton, because Logic's last major update introduced clips and looping clips, which is just nicked directly from Ableton. So that's quite interesting.
Yes.
And then Ableton's comping thing is nicked directly from Logic. Maybe other doors as well that I'm not aware of, I'm sure. But the idea of having multiple tracks that you go, I have this bit, this bit, this bit.
Reason's been doing that for a few years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ableton have a lovely thing where you can say, well, actually, I'm just going to drop 5 different bits of audio into it. So for building grooves and stuff, it's really nice. You could take a loop and then you could chuck a reverse loop underneath it. You could chop up a little bit and then just literally take little bits, quantize the little bits, which, you know, and you end up with something really interesting. So they're pushing each other, which is good. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Is really good.
Yeah.
I like the Ableton have introduced randomness. I'm not into total random music, but I do like, say, a bit of random on hi-hat velocities or filtering of an arpeggio or something. If people are used to working on 4-bar loops, then, you know, like it or not, that's good. If you're trying to build a techno track, you've got to keep everything moving slightly.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to do a whole pass and you've just got to adjust that little knob backwards and forwards or whatever. Using randomness like that is a useful tool. The Deluge actually, and I'm sure other things have conditional randomness, where you can say only play this snare drum every other bar on this beat 50% of the time, kind of stuff. You know, takes it a little bit further than just giving you a random amount, and that's really nice if you want to just build up grooves and things. I'd not seen randomness before indoors, but then I am limited by Logic and Ableton, so that was a really nice touch.
Yeah.
It moves it towards more of a hardware feel, I think.
Yeah.
But like I say, I mean, if were I starting out, I would be getting Ableton, and I would find Logic less musical than Ableton. I think that's the best way of putting it, because I've grown up with it. I know it, and I grew up with having to record stuff onto tape, you know, and that's what you're doing with Logic. You've got tracks effectively on a tape, if you like. Ableton is much more like, okay, I love that, let's record that into audio, let's just listen to blah blah bang, bring this together, and less oriented towards arranging an entire song. Now I know there's the arrange window, I know you can do that, but it's not as comprehensive as other doors when you get to that bit. What it does brilliantly is building up grooves and quickly looping stuff and then live stuff. It's called Ableton.
It's called live for a reason.
You know, it's absolutely phenomenal. If you want to go out and play stuff and edit stuff and tweak stuff, it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Particularly on the dance groove stuff. I mean, main stage on the Logic side is really useful for people with lots of keyboards and patches to save, you know, potentially a more keyboard oriented approach. Ableton's just unbeatable at that kind of level.
I think it's what's great about having so many options is that there is the choice, and whatever your path, however your brain is wired, there is a door to suit you. You know, so that's great. Cryss,
sorry, I was just going to say, is anyone into Bitwig? Because that's meant to be. Everyone I speak to is like, oh, Bitwig's amazing, and that was Ableton developers, I think.
Yes, it was. Absolutely. Yeah.
Carry on.
Cryss, I know Cryss, myself, and Ben are all Logic users as well as our main doors. But have you used Live? Is this something that appeals to you?
No, I've used a handful of different DAWs going back to, I think, 96 is when I first did some computer recording. But I think I'd never even heard of it until I really got into synth stuff, because I don't think, and Dominic, maybe you know, probably not more of like a band type arranger, I would guess. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, absolutely. I just forgot to say they added MPE, which is
that's true. Yes,
massive thing.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. It's more. It's geared around loops rather than lateral, linear left to right. I'd say in a very gross generalisation that will probably have everyone in the chat.
That's exactly how I. Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't even checked out the loop stuff in Logic, so.
Yeah.
Me either.
Like I guess, you know, like you said, like if you've been doing it one way for a long time and it makes sense to you, it doesn't make good sense to change your system and learn something all
100%.
New again. But I don't think I would get as much use out of it. But it does seem to be very popular. And like when I watch music videos, tutorials, synth stuff, man, there's got to be like half of them that use Ableton. At least it seems like to me. Yeah. I feel lucky when somebody's using Logic. Like, yes, I know what's going on.
if your method of making music is generally get a 1, 2, 4 bar groove going, get that looping, play something over the top, get that. This is the way I'm building up my track. Ableton's absolutely perfect for that. You know? When you want to then take that and go, right, actually I need a bridge into the chord. If you're writing a pop song, for example, you know, that's where I immediately flip back into Logic. Now there's nothing I can't do on Ableton like that, but it's just a little bit more complex than the way I'm used to before. So getting these fabulous grooves going is brilliant, you know, and the live thing, as we say. But the MPE thing that's come on, what's interesting is the interface they've added for you to edit and control MPE, which is I'm still digging into it, but MPE is really, really hard. So MPE, if no one aware, is this next level MIDI where you've got polyphonic aftertouch on individual notes and all this stuff, and to actually be able to get in and edit that is confusing because you need an interface that allows you to nail individual notes and individual stuff, and it looks like they've done a really good job with that. So that alone would probably be enough.
So Ben, is it worth coming to you for this?
No.
There you go. Ben has spoken. You don't use this at all.
I've never used it, but my problem comes from like when the Atari ST first came out. I got Cubase on that. I went from a QX1 straight to Cubase on there, and it was just kind of ingrained into me then. I could never get away from the Cubase way of thinking.
Yeah,
20 odd years later or whatever it was, maybe 30 years, God knows, I'm still using it. I have got Logic, and I put it on today actually, but I turned it off straight away because I do like it. It's just that all these Cubase like ways of working are all in like muscle memory with me now. I just do things without thinking about it. I don't like having to Google how do you alter the velocity on that, you know. It's you just want to be able to do it, don't you? So I'm scared of trying anything new, really.
I was, and I'm like you know, I started off Ataris. Actually, I started off with Commodore 64s, but you know, Ataris with Cubase, and then moved into just Cubase on the PC. And I was there for a number of years, and I just kind of got disillusioned with it as an application because I seemed to spend more time configuring it and trying to get it to do the things I wanted it to do rather than making music. And that's why I went to Reason, because Reason for me just made sense, and I was getting music out much, much quicker and better. And then it was only the last couple of years that I've got Logic because everyone else was using it, and I was starting to get work where people were sending me Logic sessions, and I'm thinking, well, I've got a Mac, and it's half the price of Cubase, so I might as well go. And I have to admit, I've taken to it not quite like a duck to water, but it's kind of a familiar transition. And the fact that I can use the Reason Rack plugin in there means that I can start bringing stuff over from my other projects and just making it work. But talking of Cubase, of course, there is the new version of that, also called Cubase 11. So, Ben, I'm going to come to you first with this. What do you think about the new features in Cubase, such as simpler stems and the sampling features and stuff? Are you getting moist about the gusset?
The stems thing needed looking at, because that's an absolute pain. That if you soloing tracks and do all these multiple run-throughs. Apparently now you can just set it off to export the stems, go for a brew, come back, and it's all done. So that's great. I like the I can't remember what they've called it now, but there's a feature in it that's very similar to Isotope's RX8 kind of thing, where you get this
with the
analysis of pre-mixed audio, and you can separate it.
Spectra Layers 1.
That's called it. That's the one. That's a great addition. That.
But as Dom says, everyone's kind of pinching a little bit off everyone else. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the look of everything as well in this Cubase it seems to have gone a little bit towards the Pro Tools look. It's, they've obviously been basing a few things on that. There's quite a few good effects been added as well, like things like for side chaining on multi-band compression. you can sidechain it in like three different signals going into a multi-band compressor, which is
okay.
That's quite interesting. You get some good effects with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like a good, a good update. I didn't update to 10.5 because one, my operating system wouldn't support it because I'm still on High Sierra.
Right.
And I had an objection towards the price of it anyway. It's these. I don't think it's right asking people for, to pay upgrades until you've got to the next whole number.
Yes. and that was another thing that put me off it, because I remember there was towards the end of the 90s, because I think my first PC version was Cubase 3. It was just before VST came out.
Yeah.
I got a free upgrade to VST, but that was just a grace period thing. Then Cubase 4 was Mac only. Then Cubase 5, and I paid for that. I think it was like 99 quid at the time. And then Cubase SX, SL and SX, and I had to pay for that. And it was just like every year they were bringing something, and there was another 100 quid and another 100 quid. And back then I was pretty poor, so I just thought, no, stuff this. I want something. If I pay for an upgrade, it's got to be the big game changer upgrade rather than just the next kind of thing. And along with the technical difficulties, and that was hardware related as well. I kind of went off it, but I still have a soft spot for Cubase, so much so that when they did their was it 30th anniversary or 40th anniversary thing, or 35th, I don't know, last year, they knocked the price right down, and I was in Canada at the time, and I'd put it off and I thought, I'm going to go for it. It was like £140 cross grade, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that, and I'm going to go Cubase. And I logged onto the website, and I was like, half jet lagged, and it came up in Canadian dollars, and I thought, oh no, if I buy this in Canada, will I get the same level of support in the UK? And it's like my brain was frazzled, so I said, no, forget it, I'll sort it out when I get home. Got home 2 days after the offer had finished, and I pleaded with them, but they would not let me take it. And I thought, really, you're going to just throw a sale?
They've always been a little bit funny with the money side of things like that, but
yeah,
I think what's good about this version now, version 11, is that the Cubase Artist, which is the really stripped down version, it's not the most basic one. I think Elements is the most basic one, but the Cubase Artist now, it's considerably cheaper than the Pro version. But when you look at the features on it, they're really good. It's like unlimited audio tracks, unlimited MIDI tracks. When it used to have, like, you were limited to 2 audio tracks, and 8 MIDI tracks for some reason. You can go to town on all that now, and all the effects are in there. There's the ability to sidechain, and it's quite a good package that now. For the money.
Yeah. Well, so you pay your money, takes your choice, and I guess I get asked a lot, or used to get asked a lot, what do you recommend as a DAW? And it's like, well, what size shoes do you wear? Mine are different to yours, but you're never going to get one size fits all. So you need to go and try them. And Cubase, do they still not have a demo version? Is that because for a long while they didn't do a demo? Yeah. Every other DAW had a demo version that you could try for 30 days or something.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Cubase was the only one that you couldn't get a demo of, which I thought was, because when I transitioned from Cubase to Reason, I thought, I'm going to try everything. So I got the demo of Live, I got the demo of Reason, I got the demo of what else was it at the time? It wouldn't have been Logic because I didn't have a Mac, but yeah, I just went through all demo versions, and then Reason was the one that I kept going back to and actually making music with. So that's where I went.
But we should encourage everybody to use as many different DAWs as possible, because as Dominic was saying earlier, it's better for everyone if that competition's out there driving everything forward.
And also, I got asked to do this session a few weeks back, and the composer that asked me to do the session is all Cubase, and so he said, I'll print everything out as stems. He sent the Cubase files over, but he also just exported the MIDI as well for some of it, so I could build the thing back into Logic to do my piece and then package that up and send it, but then he'd have to re-import it. So I'm still thinking of getting it just if that work picks up a little bit more. You kind of have to have because not everybody works on the same platform. So.
No.
Yeah.
But at least if you're contracted to do some tracks, like I've done that a number of times where people with Cubase have asked me to play some guitar or lead solo or something, and they'll just send me the stereo file or whatever they have. I record it in Logic and just send them out the stem of that.
Yeah.
And it works pretty easy. I mean, I would love to see the whole session and everything, but I didn't really need to. It's like you're just tracking one part.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, that what you were talking about, Robbie, would be different. Some of the things you've done, but at least as far as like all of us working together for, just making music, putting parts down, it can be done pretty much in any DAW now. But it is nice when all your friends have the same DAW as you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be nice if like all the DAW manufacturers, like MIDI, could all agree on a common file standard that still allowed them to do all their stuff, but you could like an export menu that says export to this or export to this common standard, like an open standard, like the open document, like the Word thing. But everyone could open it and then interpret it in their own DAW, but have that kind of common basic file. Because at the end of the day, it's digital audio and MIDI mostly, So why can't that's all standard? Why can't they do that? Putting the world to rights again. We've overrun just a little bit here. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about or add to the things we've done? Did you want to squeeze that one little extra topic out, or we can move to next week? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that cassette thing was interesting.
I
like that. Yeah.
Oh, well, go on then. Let's quickly do that then, because. This is quite... Now, Cryss originally shared this with me, and it was like a demo video of... And I'm sorry, I got like 30 seconds in, and I just had to turn it off. The guy was really, really annoying. However, so I've used the company's website. So this is SketchCassette II, which is basically... I haven't shared this with sound, have I? Let me do this again. Sorry, I'm still getting used to doing all this... sharing and that. Now we share audio. Right, so I like the GUI on this for a start. I mean, even if I don't use it for its sound, it's a hand-drawn GUI. So here we go. It's got some audio coming in here now. No, I've gone and done that now, haven't I? There we go. Let me share the right screen. I knew we'd have a moment like this.
It's okay.
There we go. So you can choose between a whole bunch of tape-related effects: Type 1, Type 2, Type 4, cheap value, standard, age of new, used and worn, hiss and saturation. But I just think the GUI just looks really fun. I like that because. Maybe next week we can talk about the guitar amp one that you found, Cryss. But anybody could make use of this. There seems to be a glut of tape-based plugins recently.
I think it's great, but one thing I've got to say before this is my main contribution to this bit. Really, is that little demo there is awesome. Because we've seen like people like Alex Ball and Mark Doty and that do this kind of thing before. But I had one of those moments. I'm watching it, and I thought, it's all the same song. And then it comes in, because he does this. He does the electron bit. He does a synth bit. Then he does a guitar. He does a drum kit. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's all right, this. And then it dawned on me. I thought, wow. And then he plays it all together at the end, and it's just a great little way of presenting the
it's
product,
done very
I
good.
think.
Yeah, the presentation is very good.
It's really good.
Cryss, did you buy this?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I was playing with it yesterday, doing some recording. So when I first saw it, I had been looking. So the story goes, I bought that. What's it called? Echo Cat, I think, from Waves Factory, the Watkins copycat clone. Loved it. Thought it was a great sounding plugin. Really nailed the old tape machine delay sound. And so one of their other ones was, I don't remember what it's called, but it's a cassette tape thing like this, but it has a more normal looking GUI to it. And it sounded really good. I was like, oh, I'm going to get that one maybe on Black Friday sale or something. I've got the list going. And so this one I saw popped up, and at first I was like, look at that hand-drawn silly thing. And I totally just missed it. And I saw it pop up again. I don't know, maybe it might have been like a Facebook ad or something. And so I thought, oh, let me just go listen to it on YouTube. I'm like, wow, this one sounds really good too. And it was really cheap, so I ended up buying it. And so, of course, we got like the Studer style tape machine, plugins like the IK Multimedia tape, or I think Softtube has one, and all those. But this is just completely a different vibe to it, and it really reminds me of back in the early '90s or whatever, having one of those Tascam 424 machines.
Yeah.
And the horrible quality and all the stuff you had to deal with bouncing and so this really kind of captures that. Now you can get it to sound very neutral and natural sounding and just add a little bit of that effect in and out, or you can have it go totally crazy. And so one of the patches I created yesterday, I was trying it with drums and synth and guitar, and so I had a guitar part. And there's a switch for FM on there that the wow and flutter are two separate sections, and it'll take the wow modulator and it'll modulate the flutter LFO. Right. And so I got this kind of Leslie patch that would it would speed up and slow down as you're playing it, but it doesn't sound like a Leslie. It's just a weird kind of lo-fi warble, add a little bit of saturation, a little bit of hiss, and then I did it with like the most modern design guitar that I have, like fan frets, like super shredder type thing that I've got 7-string going on here. And it took this guitar, which is very hi-fi and modern sounding, and just really brought this old school lo-fi vibe to it, like I was grabbing my K out of the living room, my old 60s K or my 60s Framus or something, and kind of got there. So I liked it. I'm still going to try the Waves Factory. Again, not Waves, but Waves Factory. I'm going to still try theirs. But I didn't really think I would be interested in the tape cassette stuff, because I was like, oh, geez, I'm so glad we're into DAWs and we don't have to deal with that sound. But when you kind of hear some of this stuff on good music, it can bring back a familiarity of what it was like to listen to music on your Walkman and,
I remember I picked up a Tascam multi-track tape deck a few years back. I got it dirt cheap. There was only because one of the faders was slightly iffy, and I got it. I was really excited because I always wanted one back in the day. Got it, put a cassette in it, recorded some stuff. Sounds like shit. And I just packaged it back up and sold it on, and I didn't lose any money, I didn't make any money, but I'm sorry, no, I cannot, it's ruined. It's never meet your heroes. And there you go.
I remember doing it, I had no idea about companding and expanding and all that stuff, and it was just the workarounds that you would have to come up to make something sound good after you had done 2 rounds of bouncing. So you'd record your track, but you'd max the treble out on it and do stuff like that, and then later as it got bounced down, it warmed back to your original sound.
So, Dom, from an app designer's Dom, from an app designer's point of view, this kind of hand-drawn GUI thing, what do you make of that?
I love it much more than these sort of pretend tape machines and stuff that you can see. I mean, that's one. I don't know. GUIs are really important. It seems for 2 reasons in music. One, it's got to be really easy to use. Obviously, that's the whole thing. A GUI designer wasn't even a job that long ago, and now it's one of the most vital parts of the development process, certainly on the front end side. But I'm not keen on. Waves do it a lot, making this machine just look exactly like an old school thing. I'm sure, if only because I fall for it. If I had an old LA2A or something plug-in that didn't look like an LA2A, I wouldn't feel quite the same. And that's annoying because it's getting me, and I'm sure it gets everyone else. So I really like this. I mean, it sounds great. It doesn't sound like a cassette to me, although I've only really heard it when it's been kind of turned up. So maybe the subtle thing that you were talking about just then it kind of helps. it is funny dealing with, no one would ever want something to sound like a cassette. It's like, why on earth would anyone pay for a bottle of water?
It's crazy because when we had the cassettes, we were doing everything we could to cut the noise out.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're putting it back in.
But with that whole lo-fi loveliness is great. And I think when you're looking at tape plugins, generally the non-cassette ones are all about that nice tape compression that you can get and that warmth, And I like the Slate digital plugins for that. I mean, I've evolved to having pretty much only about 5 bits that I use. FabFilter, the Slate digital plugins, and a couple of other bits and pieces now. And I use less and less effects and plugins the more stuff I do, especially recently. And to me now, it's about finding really good source sounds, and then they just kind of work. But these kind of things that can change and age or just make something sound organic is great. And I was really impressed with the way it sounded. I was just like, well, this isn't a cassette. This is just a great big lo-fi machine. I love it. It's really good.
And it's cheap as well, $20.
Yeah.
So can't go wrong.
Argue with that.
And I think one of the advantages of just something like this, or any of the tape units, is that you actually get the control of what it does well and what it doesn't do well, because with the real tape machines, especially if you're recording on your old boombox or a little Tascam, you just had everything to deal with, the diminishing highs, the noise. If you didn't take care of it and degauss it and all that kind of stuff, you had to deal with all the issues all the time, no matter what. With this, you can kind of blend it in, and like the tape age and the tape type, if you go through them, it's like the Mk.II or whatever, it's really clean, and you almost can't tell it's on there. But then if you start aging it, or the wow and flutter, just like the other the reel-to-reel tape machine copies, like using that as an effect, that if you grew up in that era listening to tapes on a Walkman, you instantly recognize it. It's familiar. It feels warm. You can do it without all the hiss or the degradation if you want, and just use the modulation. Or if you're just looking for something that, like, you've got a kind of an ordinary sound part that's recorded well, but you're like, maybe this needs a little bit more vibe to it. How could I slightly alter it that's almost imperceptible, but it's going to be the thing that makes the difference and just bring life to a track? And so, like when you're synth programming, you want to find those places that you add just little bits of modulation to keep things always interesting and moving. And this can do that for whatever instrument you're recording, even if it's like piano, drums, or guitar.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So Aberrant DSP SketchCassette II from aberrantdsp.com, available now. It's got $10 off. It's only 20. Go on, treat yourself. You want to. So there we go, guys. We've finished this show, our first show on this new platform. I think we kind of kept. I kept the mistakes to a reasonable minimum. We're getting used to it, but thank you ever so much for joining us. Thank you to Dominic Hawken.
Pleasure. Thank you.
There are a lot of people in the chat room saying that they are waiting for the horse's head thing.
I'm afraid it's a secret. It's been packed up again for Christmas.
Oh well, sorry guys. Yeah, see Wagyu saying that,
and it's a unicorn.
It's a unicorn. Sorry, yes. Yeah, horses' heads in. Yeah, that's a completely different thing.
My cosplay fans out there, I'll see what I can do for the next one.
Yeah. See, with our contract, we had to provide him with a bowl of M&Ms and no brown M&Ms in there. Next time, we'll put it in the contract that he wears the unicorn hat.
Yeah,
exactly.
We'll do that. Exactly. But then we're getting lots of positive comments about the quality, so that's really good, because that's one thing we were really conscious of, that Skype into OBS out of my home broadband was a little bit iffy. So yeah, it's gone reasonably well, and all these I'm trying to get into a point where I can use all these new features without having to worry about what I'm doing or who I'm cutting off or what have you. So we're getting there.
I'll just say that I thought it looked fantastic today. You did a great job of managing the screens and everything, and you've had a lot to really get under your hat in a short period of time. But
we can do it live now, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great rehearsal.
Yeah, maybe then. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. So if you want to, as Cryss pointed out at the top of the show, we do have a PayPal donate feature now. The link's there on the video. You can't click on the link in the video, but it's in the description down below. Have you put it onto the Facebook page, Cryss?
No, it is in the description of the video. We can put that on the Facebook later. But
yeah, if you want to donate money and you haven't got the link, just hit one of us up, on Facebook or whatever, and we'll happily pass you the link on. And just to be clear, we are not making any profit out of this. All the money will be ploughed back into enabling us to carry on doing this kind of thing. And if we are fortunate enough to have more money left over than we need for this, then we'll pump it into other things that are all ProSynth Network related. So we're not taking anything from this at all. Promise. Fingers crossed. So there we go. That's everything. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. I haven't gone through and said hi to everyone as I normally do, but to everyone that's joined in, there's loads of regulars. There's a whole bunch of people in there that I've not seen before. I wonder if any of our Facebook viewers, we did have a few because we are doing this on Facebook at the same time. I wonder if that all went okay, so we'll look into that. But thanks ever so much to everyone for joining us. Thanks to Dominic for being on the show today. I'm just now trying to talk, so this is the thing I've got to learn, is talking and controlling all these new things. We will be back same time, same place next week, 8 p.m. on Sunday, what's that going to be? 22nd of November. Yeah. 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern, midday West Coast. Have we got anybody lined up for next week for a guest? I know we've got some invitations that we just haven't heard back.
Yeah, we might have somebody that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've got to speak to them.
Keep that to yourself then.
Yeah.
Okay. Dominic, thanks ever so much, mate. Really appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me. It's a good blast.
And thank you for your contribution on the group. It's great to have somebody with your level of experience. That's great. Thank you. So we will see you all same time, same place next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Wow.